But all they ask for, obviously, is your name and when's your birthday during your eligibility. And then normally, some of them, CVS asks for a ton of insurance information. They keep telling you they're not going to bill you. But Walgreens didn't, or rather, Kroger did not ask for any of that, and all they wanted was my Medicare card when I got there, and you paid nothing.
Yeah, well, I get my drugs at Kroger, so I might as well.
You should be all set.
Yeah.
So just
At least start calling.
Yeah.
Okay, the bells have rung. Welcome to First Universalist of New Madison. It's cool out there. Anybody see Groundhog Day again? Is your Groundhog Day second? Every morning at 6 o'clock. Oh, it's cold out there. And it's cold out there, like 90 degrees. But it's nice and bright, so we're glad to have you with some way or another. Announcements or votes? We have one, we're working with El Laredo, and he's going to be here the 21st. Derek is going to be here the 21st. If you get on their mailing list, they have pretty interesting. They have like a teleconference thing where they do church a couple times a week just by phoning in. So it's not quite as complicated. I was going to look into that and see, and they're also doing some projects. The ladies are there, so we need to kind of talk to them and see if we can, when Eric gets here, or Derek gets here the 21st, we'll kind of work on that. Let's see. Anything else? Oh, we were talking about before we started today, your vaccinations are starting to show up at Kroger's, CVS's, the health departments. Nobody really knows how to get there, so I suggest, and I've been told, just start calling or checking on your internet on the computer. Call CVS, call the health department, call Kroger, and just ask them when they're going to have something and how do you get on the list and when's the best time to start calling. And it appears that just start calling anytime and say, is the list going? Because it looks like it's a hit or miss, or get online and see if you can find that, because that is very important to get that vaccine as quickly as possible. And particularly if other people, they're hesitant to get it, then the people who want it should get it ahead of time to protect themselves. Okay, our theme, just by happen chance, no, it's because I did it on purpose, is snow. And as you know, I like animals, so there's got to be a deer in the picture of snow. So every theme, well, actually, except for one. Our children's story is going to be Ferdinand Bull. I'm reading the whole thing, but it's pretty short, so that I'll go through really quick. So that doesn't really fit. It's not painted. I think last week I had like 2 feet of snow, just like that country. So I should have a picture of it. Opening words, The Beauty of the Whole by Meg Barnhouse. We gather to worship, our hearts alive with hope that here we will truly be seen, that here we will be welcomed into the garden of this community, where the simple and the elegant, the fluid and frilled, the shy and the dramatic complement one another and are treasured. May we know that here each contributes in their way to the beauty of the whole. Come, let us worship together, all genders, all sexualities, politics, clappers and non-clappers, progressive and conservative. May we root ourselves in the value of this faith, the compassion and courage, transcendence, justice, and transformation. Our chalice lighting. I should have these on a switch, or I could just flip the switch and turn them on. Although it's not like we're in a big hurry. This is an avalanche. You probably can't see it very well, and probably not at home either, but avalanches are pretty amazing things. They just had one in Utah with, unfortunately, 4 people did not make it out. 4 people did. But they're pretty amazing when you see the destruction that they cause. Chalice lighting, a communion of heart and soul by Bruce Southworth. For the gift of this day and for our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion Beautiful, Heart and Soul. They just had a special on Billie Holiday on PBS this week, if anybody saw it. She came in the 30s and 40s from a sharecropper family down south. Had only had a range of 1 octave, which is pretty limiting for a singer, but she had the ability to interpret and put life and feeling and soul into her music that is still a classic even to this day. We're still playing it and still appreciating it. The sun shines even when it's cold. It may not give much heat, but if you can get in a little corner with protection from the wind, it will still warm you up. Our opening hymn is 211, Jacob's Ladder. If I stumble, will you help me? And the answer is, Yes. Children's story this morning is Ferdinand the Bull. This story was written, I think, in like 35 or 36, something like that. It's a really old story. Disney made it unbelievably popular with the cartoon of Ferdinand the Bull, which I saw at a very young age. Then I went to Spain, and this picture, which is pretty blurry, because it's from a slide from whatever, 50 years ago, is a bandolero. This is in Hemingway's town of the San Fermin, the festival, the 7th day, the 7th month, 7th hour. And the idea of bullfighting is kind of different than what the story is in Ferdinand. It is a sport, which they call it a sport. It's not much of a sport for the bulls. They come out with the bandoleros and the picadors and then the matador. The bandoleros have these little feathered lances, and they poke them into the bull's neck with barbs on them. And what it does is weaken the bull's neck muscles so he can't get his head up high enough, which is safer for the matador, because if the bull isn't able to toss him with those long, sharp horns, there's less danger of death. Then the picadors come out on the horse with a long lance, and they do the same thing. They stab the bull in the neck to cut those muscles and weaken him and weaken him. And then so as you're going along in the bullfight, there's blood running down his neck. He's snorting and breathing and doesn't know what's going on. And then the matador comes out and performs the dance with the cape and takes a sword and runs it down between the neck vertebrae, because his head is down. He's not able to lift it up. And that's what exterminates or what kills the bull. And then, of course, they send him to the slaughterhouse, and it's meat for the poor. And there is a certain amount of artistry involved in it. In Mexico, they have bullfights, but they don't kill the bull. It's just they dance with the bull, and then everybody escapes alive. So there's positives and negatives. There's culture, and we hear all the time about how valuable culture is and how you can't change it. Some things maybe need to change. So here's the story of Ferdinand the Bull. Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull, and his name was Ferdinand. It looked like a bull singing, but they're not. All the other bulls he lived with would jump and rub their heads together, but not Ferdinand. Here's Ferdinand going off alone into the hill country. He just liked to sit quietly and smell flowers. And there's Ferdinand in the flower patch. And he kind of has brown ears. If you know what brown bulls are, their ears are sag down. So I'm not sure. I think that's in the breeding either. He had a favorite spot out on the pasture under a cork tree. Are you familiar with cork trees? There's a lot of them in Spain and Italy. That's what they actually make corks for wine bottles out of. They peel the bark off the cork tree, and it grows back, and then 20 years later they peel the bark off again and load it up on donkeys and take it into the cork factory. It was his favorite tree, and he would sit in the shade all day and smell flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, obviously, would worry about him. She was afraid he would be lonesome all by himself. "Why don't you run and play with the other little bulls and skip and butt your head?" she would say. But Ferdinand would shake his head. "I like it better here, where I can just sit quietly and smell flowers." He saw that he was not lonesome because she was an understanding mother. Even though she was a cow, she let him just sit and be happy. She was an understanding mother. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted most of all was to be picked to fight at the bullfights in Madrid. Not very bright bulls. Obviously he had not seen a bullfight before. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to sit quietly under the cork tree and smell the flowers. One day, 5 men came in very funny hats to pick the biggest, fastest, roughest bull to fight in the bullfights at Madrid. And these are actual portrayals of the hats you will see in Spain during the festivals. The one I saw was like in Pamplona, as I said. They've got these weird, tall stovepipe hats, the little curly Q things, the ones that look kind of like Mexican, the ones that look like Cossacks, and then, of course, the ones that look like cowboys. All the other bulls ran around snorting and butting and leaping and jumping so the men would think they were the very strong and most fierce and pick them. Ferdinand knew they wouldn't pick him, and he didn't even care, so he went out to his favorite cork tree to sit down. He didn't look where he was sitting, and instead of sitting on the nice cool grass in the shade, he sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a bull sat on you, what would you do? You would sting him, and that's just what the bee did to Ferdinand. And here's Ferdinand with his eyes bulging out, realizing he's just been stung. Wow, it hurt. Ferdinand jumped up with a snort. He ran around puffing and snorting and butting and pawing the ground as if he were crazy. The 5 men saw him and they all shouted with joy. Here was the largest and fiercest bull of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. And of course, Madrid was like going to New York City. It was the preeminent place. Almost every little town in Spain has a bullfight. They have their own little bull rings, and they have their own little crop of wannabe matadors who want to make it into the big time. I would compare it kind of like to NASCAR here, where you have the dirt tracks out in like Eldora around here, and the guys hoping they can get good enough to go to the big leagues. That's what bullfighting was in Spain. So they took him away for the bullfight in a cart, which they actually do, drawn by donkeys, a cart with big wooden wheels. What a day it was. Flags were flying, bands were playing, everybody was having a good time, and all the lovely ladies had flowers in their hair. They had a parade into the bull ring, which they do. First came the bandoleros with long, sharp pins with ribbons on them to stick in the bull and make him mad. Next came the picadors, who rode skinny horses, and they had long spears to stick in the bull and make him madder. And as I said, to weaken the bull. Actually, blood loss also weakens him, so he's not as strong. Then came the matador, the proudest of all. He thought he was very handsome and bowed to the ladies. He had a red cape and a sword and was supposed to stick the bull last of all. That's a polite way. Stick the bull is a polite way of saying what they were going to do. And then came the bull. You know who that was, don't you? And here's the entrance with the gates open, and here's Ferdinand with his head just sticking out. They called him Ferdinand the Fierce, and all the bandoleros were afraid of him, and the picadors were afraid of him, and the matador was scared stiff. Ferdinand ran to the middle of the ring, and everyone shouted and clapped because they thought they were going to fight fiercely and butt and snort and stick his horns around. But not Ferdinand. When he got to the middle of the ring, he saw the flowers and all the lovely ladies' hair, and he just sat down quietly and smelled. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He just sat and smelled. And the bandoleros were mad, and the picadors were mad, and the matador was so mad he cried because he couldn't show off with his cape and sword. So they had to take Ferdinand home. That is a children's story because in real life, Ferdinand would not go home. And for all I know, he is sitting there still under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers just quietly. He is very happy. The end. So, the moral of the story, be who you are, no matter what the consequences. You don't have to fight to make your way in the world. You can make a name for yourself by being a quiet, flower-smelling, conscientious objector. Okay. Next we have joys and concerns. Anything to announce or anything to bring before? We have Emerson, I hope is doing well on recuperation. Has anybody talked to him?
No.
I think Chaz talked to him last week. He's the one that passed along the information. He had surgery. Hopefully he's doing well. So we have a couple people here. Remind me at the end, we'll fill out a get well card and send it to him. We have a big trial coming up this week. That should be interesting. The nation is still teetering on the edge of, are we going to be a democratic country or are we going to let our emotions and feelings run away with us? Still seeing things that are kind of frightening. Still having votes in the Congress where people are not being castigated, not being brought to face what they have done and what they espouse. So let's, in your own way, have thoughts and prayers for the nation, the future of the nation, the future of our democracy. Okay. Safe driving, and you need to get your vaccination shots as soon as possible. Remember, you can call Kroger, CVS, or local health department. It's not going to come on you. Nobody is going to help you. This doesn't seem to be. So if you have problems or don't understand how to do that, let us know at the church, and we will take it upon ourselves to help you find a place where you can get a shot. All right. The message is Kevin Bacon. Well, actually, it's 6 degrees of separation. And I've combined two along. This is a TED Talk by Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon is an interesting person, an interesting actor. One of my favorite movies from a long, long time ago is Tremors. I don't know how many have seen that. I'm going to have a little clip of that. When I loaded it, I could sort through it and eliminate like about 3/4 of it, which is unnecessary. When I tried to do it here this morning, I wanted to play all of it. So what I'm going to do is, whoop, missed that. Let's go back to snow. This is actually a house that's completely buried in a snowdrift. You can just see the garage doors peeking out of the bottom. And if you remember the blizzard of '78, there were houses that were actually like that. Okay, this is Kevin Bacon. And we're going to leave it on silent till we get to the part. One of the reasons is I know we have people here who not here technically today, or maybe today, who objected when we had some impolite language from the pulpit a couple years ago. If you've watched Tremors, you know there is quite a bit of, pardon my French, impolite language. So we're going to skip all those parts and wait till we get to the good part. Kevin Bacon is the 6 degrees of separation. A bunch of college kids put this together and made it up. And he explains in his TED Talk how that affected him and what he thought about it and what he thought was going to happen to him. And something totally and completely different happened as 6 degrees of separation began to spread around the world. And now academics, scholars, philosophers are actually looking at 6 degrees of separation and realizing that, kind of like religion has told us for years and years and years and centuries, that we are all connected. We don't know how many degrees each time, but they've actually made a theory and a study out of it. So let's go to the good part. Or maybe not. This is the Tremor underground creature chasing them. And if you remember, they're afraid of loud noises. So what they did was throw these homemade bombs to scare them away. Can you fly? That's the operative word. And the next most important word,
well, it just suddenly, stampede.
stampede. Okay, Kevin Bacon, this is a transcript of his TED Talk. I wish to start at the end. Most of us have contemplated our own death, and who's going to be at the funeral, and are they going to cry, stuff like that. I don't think that's morbid. Honestly, I think it's okay to wonder about a world that doesn't have us in it. But I'm an actor, so the depth of my self-involvement runs very, very deep. and this fantasy plays out a little differently for me. Bob Dylan once told me, never drop a name. Well, he didn't say it like that, and I can't imitate Bob Dylan, but you know what that sounds like. I was on an airplane one time with Bruce Willis, Demi Moore, Nicole Kidman, and Tom Cruise, and all I could think was, if this plane goes down, I'm not even going to make the headlines. So let's say I don't die in a crash with bigger stars than me, and I actually get an obituary. I lately thought it was probably going to read, actor Kevin Bacon, dead. No Oscars, but at least he has a game named after him, The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. In case you haven't heard of this game, the idea is that any actor, alive or dead, can be connected to me through our work in 6 steps or less. I'm going to give you an example of that. I actually had to go to the Oracle of Bacon website, which is actually a website, to find, because I am good at a couple things, but playing this game is not one of them. I randomly picked Rudolph Valentino. Rudolph Valentino in 1922 was in Beyond the Rocks. I'm sure we all remember that one, right? He was in it with Gertrude Astor, who did Daddy Longlegs in 1955 with James Cromwell. That's still way before me. And was in Beyond All Boundaries in 2009 with me. That gives Rudolph Valentino a Bacon number of 3. I can pretty much guarantee that at this point, Rudolph Valentino does not give a crap. So how does all this start? In 1994, I'm minding my own business. I'm making movies. I'm trying to raise my family. I don't remember exactly how I first heard about it, but it just started to seep into my life. People would come up to me and say things like, you know, my cousin made up a game about you, or, dude, I'm so hungover, man. I was in a bar last night. We were playing your game. I got really drunk and I'm a mess. I was absolutely horrified. I know it's a cliche, but actors, behind all the muscles and the shining white teeth and the low-cut dresses, it's really just masking a lot of very, very deep insecurity. So when I heard this, I thought it was a joke at my expense. I thought I'm going to be the laughing stock. People are basically saying, can you believe that this lightweight can be connected to the greats like Lawrence Oliver or Marlon Brando or Meryl Streep? And the pathetic thing is, I was actually working with Meryl Streep at the time. Someone then told me that the guys who invented this game were going to be on the Howard Stern show. I thought to myself, okay, that's it. That's the beginning of the end of my career. The game was invented by 4 college students from Albright College, which is in Reading, Pennsylvania, not too far from where I grew up in downtown Philadelphia. They are sitting around their dorm room one day. One of my pictures, one of my least memorable movies, actually is playing on the TV screen, and they say, maybe we can figure out out this connection thing. So the internet is really just starting to explode with these ideas, and it moves from Albright College to the web and takes off. I'm in the middle of promoting a film. I can't remember which one, and I get an offer to be on a new MTV nighttime talk show called The Jon Stewart Show, or actually it becomes The Daily Show. And I come to find out that the Kevin Bacon guys, which is what they are being called now, the Kevin Bacon guys, are also booked on the same show. I think to myself, I'm not doing this show. I'm going to be the punchline of an hour-long joke. I was furious, but I stopped and I said to myself, sometimes you just have to confront. You have to confront your demons. Sometimes you have to face the beast. So I said, I'm going to get in. I'm going to look those guys in the eye and I'm going to say, listen, fellows, get another patsy, okay? There's Kevin Spacey, there's Kevin Costner, there's Kevin Kline. Find someone else. I go into the green room and here they come. I was completely and totally disarmed. They were nervous, they were smart, they were funny, they were cool, all the things I didn't expect. I left that place and I thought to myself, well, that's it. It's over. I'm cool. It's not going to last. In 3 months, nobody else is going to be talking about the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It just had this incredible hang time. People would start to come up to me on the subway, literally go 0, 0, 0. The Onion had a headline that said, Kevin Bacon connected to Osama bin Laden in 6 steps or less. There were articles about politics, sports, and all kinds of stuff, science, mathematics. A few years down the line, the planes flew into the World Trade Center, and I got to pick up my little girl way too early and see the fear in her eyes. We go to war, and everywhere I look, man, it's like turmoil and sickness. And a family member is diagnosed with cancer, and another friend dies of addiction. And I feel completely overwhelmed. And I say to myself, you have to do more. You have to figure out a way to do more. Giving some money over here, voting over there, showing up at things, doing PSAs, whatever. I open up the refrigerator, and there's Paul Newman. He's staring at me from a jar of tomato sauce. I think to myself, that's amazing. I love Paul Newman. I love him as an actor, but I love what he did with his time on this planet. He liked to make salad dressing, and he liked to make tomato sauce. And $300 million left later, it's still this juggernaut for charity. And I thought, what do I do? Do I have any? I'm not Paul Newman, but do I have anything that is branded with me? And somehow the Footloose Foundation just didn't feel right. And I said, well, wait a second, 6 degrees. So I ran to the computer and I typed in 6degrees.com, and it's a real estate website. And then I went, no, that's not it. I need 6degrees.org. I go, and it's available. If you want to call these guys, I was, wow, I don't know how to do it. What do I do to have to get a website? So I call my buddy Willie, who is a little better at this, and he goes in, access my broker. $3,500 later, I own 6degrees.org. I have no idea what to do with it. I start talking to my family and my friends. I'm a complete neophyte in this world of philanthropy. I really don't know what I'm doing. I thought that I wanted to do something that showed the connectivity. I wanted to do some kind of good. It amazes me that people think of a do-gooder as an insult. That always blows my mind. I knew that I wanted to raise money. I knew that this couldn't be my main job because I'm a very busy guy. So I was talking to somebody at the charity thing that I was doing, and he said, you should talk to the guy who knows another guy. You should check out this thing called Network for Good. I go on to the Network for Good and realize, much to my chagrin, they were doing exactly what it was that I wanted to do. And of course, I was naive to think that I was having some great new idea. I thought that I was going to be some kind of do-gooder, internet star, or something like that. This is the digital age. Ideas are just bursting like fireworks on the 4th of July. But I figured I would call this guy, Bill Strathman from Network for Good, and just reach out to him and see if he could help me. Much to my surprise, they were actually interested in partnering. He saw me as more of an opportunity than some kind of competition. And I come from the dog-eat-dog world of show business, man. It's like every man for himself, getting parts or movies, being number one and all that stuff. But in philanthropy, it just seems to be a little more partnering. And of course, that's the way it should be. So we started to shape this idea of what 6degrees.org could be. We decided that we really wanted to make it celebrity-based. And then I thought about Uggs. You know, Uggs, those goofy boots. So actresses don't like to wear their shoes from the trailer to the set. I love actresses. I'm married to one. But sometimes they're a little delicate. They don't want to get their toes wet or slip on their heels on the costumers give them those little silly boots to wear. So they walk from the trailer to the set. The paparazzi are there. Click, click, click. They take the pictures. That goes in the magazines. Women all over the world start dressing like Eskimos. So I thought, is there a way to apply that to charity? If people are going to buy something because a star uses it, what about donating to something that a star cares about? So we decided to become the celebrity face of Network for Good. About that time, we were going to Sundance, and I figured that's going to be the perfect place to try and sign up famous people for our site. We go out there, we bring some t-shirts and some buttons, we set up a booth. I talk up and walk up to all these celebrities. Everyone is very, very happy. Here is the thing. Being famous is great. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world. All day long, people are nice to me for absolutely no reason. But usually, people want something from you. So I wanted to not be the guy who was going to try and take something from these celebrities. Sure enough, you come up, how are you doing? Hug, hug, kiss, kiss. Listen, this is what I need from you. I need your picture. I need to know what causes you support, and I need you to sign this form. I can see that sometimes it's this subtle shift in people's eyes, because all of a sudden I went from being a colleague to being that guy that wanted something. But that was cool, because sometimes they'd say, well, you'll have to talk to my assistant. I was totally great with that. We left Sundance, signed up a bunch of celebrities, felt really, really good about what we had done. We created these badges. They're like floating websites. You could attach them to blogs. You could attach them to emails, and on those badges there was a picture of the celebrity and the cause that they each supported. You could click on donate, and then there was a ticker that kept tally of all the money that was rolling in. I left Sundance, man, I was like, that's it. I planted the seed. I'm going to sit back and watch the dough roll in. Not so fast. What we found was that people wanted to smell like a famous person or wear a watch if the guy is tough in the movie, and you want to wear that same watch. But when it comes to charity, it's a much more personal thing. It's more of a connection between family and friends and things you care about that have deeply affected you and personally. Animals are very, very important to people because you care about them. So we put these badges up there, and there was some initial traffic, but there really wasn't that much rolling in. The tickers weren't really turning, and I was embarrassed. I felt, frankly, like a failure. And then we were on a conference call, and someone said, hey, how about if regular people can become celebrities for their own causes? And I thought, well, that's a cool idea. What if people can create their own badges and put them right up there next to someone they admire that is recognizable? To kick this idea off, we offered a $10,000 grant to 6 people who could get the most number of donations. And this is important. Not the most money donated to their causes, but the most number of people donating. And the reason we did this is we felt the connectivity and the exponential spread of the idea of giving was just as important as the dollars and cents. The results were really stunning. A couple of examples: a woman diagnosed with MS. She's in a hospital, in a waiting room or something, sees us talking about the 6degrees.org and this challenge on TV. She's like a triathlete, like a really energetic person, takes all that energy, all that fear and sadness she had surrounding this illness and puts it into raising money for MS research. Another woman who has a son who is autistic takes this challenge up, reaches out to so many people in her community, thousands and thousands of people, and not only raises money, but spreads the idea from personal experience of her experience with autism. Later on down the road, we got some corporate sponsors who helped us out. We did some subsequent challenges. All of those have been extremely successful. A couple of years ago, we went back to Sundance and launched something called Good Cards. A good card is a gift card. You give someone for, say, $10, $20, $50, whatever. You take that card home after you receive it, you think about it, you decide what you want to do with that money and where you want to put it. It feels great 2 or 3 times over. I feel good giving it to you. You feel good using it. It's a win-win situation. We're trying to reach out now to college students. We're looking for the next big idea. Believe me, if anyone has the next big idea, let me know. We're constantly trying to shift it, to change it. When we started 6 Degrees, it's not that many years ago. It's going so fast. Nobody knew what a hashtag was. And Facebook was just for hooking up, really. We are trying to stay ahead of the curve if we possibly can. I've learned so much, and I'm constantly learning, but I do know I'm no genius when it comes to web-based ideas. I do know you can't just plant the seed and walk away. You have to be willing to water it, to fertilize it. If need be, you have to go out and buy a grow lamp. And most importantly, if you take me out of 6 Degrees idea, it is really a beautiful concept because we are all really connected. The things that we do here now on our block affect people on the other side of the world, and they affect people on the other side of town. The internet is the most powerful example of connectivity of people. We created it. I believe we created it so we stay connected. And I think we have to keep thinking about ways that we can use it as a force for good. Thanks. That's gotta be it. Now, this is a celebration by Gary Fossey, who is pastor and also a talent philosopher. This is also on separation. Is the world getting more connected, or is the world getting more connected or more fragmented? Facebook, in conjunction with the University of Milan, recently announced there were only a 4.74 degrees of separation among its 700 million users, representing 10% of the world's population. That contrasts with the famous 6 degrees that Yale researcher Stanley Milligan found back in the 60s. Social media, we are to believe, is bringing people together and closer together. Of course, I have 336 friends on Facebook, most of whom I've never met outside of a chat room. My son has 873. So despite the ballyhoo from Facebook, I have doubts that computers are building the kind of relationships that count. A study published in the American Sociological Review in 2004 found that a quarter of all Americans say they have no one they can talk to about important matters. No one. That number more than doubled from a similar study done 20 years before. Imagine not having a single confidant. It just confirms the thesis of Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone, that we're becoming more socially isolated even as the world gets more wired. In fact, the phrase online community may be an oxymoron, like Amtrak schedule or airline food. Tells you how old this is. There isn't any such thing as airline food, even in an oxymoron. This past summer, researchers at the University of Wisconsin put teenage girls in a stressful situation, like solving mental arithmetic problems, measuring the girls' level of cortisol, that's a biomarker for stress, and oxytocin, that's a hormone associated with feelings of well-being and trust. During the test, the teens were permitted to text their mothers or to call mom on the phone. It turns out that the phone conversation and the soothing tone of mother's voice lowered stress levels in the girls. Texting had no such effect. This study just confirms my own prejudices. Call me retro, but I still prefer chatting with a real live person on the telephone rather than interacting with a voicemail robot. The world has gained in efficiency and cost savings, but lost a dimension that's warm and comforting. It appears that we need an actual human presence, the shelter of each other to feel whole. There's no digital substitute for a hug, a handshake, or a smile. This is one role that religious institutions play in our culture, as well as civic organizations and bowling leagues. Of course, merely attending church, mosque, or synagogue doesn't automatically mean you feel known and accepted. You still have to do the work of building caring bonds. But at least meaningful relationships are possible in congregations and similar affinity groups in the way that cyberspace won't allow. And you know that. We can offer support from our church, but we cannot make you feel supported. You have to come, you have to participate, even if it's online. If you want that support, you have to contribute your support. How much of the vulgarity of American culture is due to the fact that we've become a nation of strangers? How much of the incivility in our politics can be traced to the breakdown of respectful person-to-person communication? The good news is that the cure to this malady is readily available through everyday acts of kindness and by reaching out to others in a spirit of helpfulness and cooperation. We can begin to reweave the fabric of this community. Indeed, the mathematical algorithms that measure the degrees of separation across the planet show that when we reach outside our personal comfort zone, for example, to encounter someone from a different race, a different religion, or a different political viewpoint, our actions have a multiplier effect. One person who breaks through the ghettos of privilege and prejudice can lower the level of global estrangement even much more than you might predict. But perhaps you don't need a university study or a mathematical analysis to tell you that the world's religions have affirmed for centuries. The best way to bring our world closer together, to lower the degree of separation and strife, is the old-fashioned way, through charity and compassion, by practicing patience and tolerance and goodwill, turning strangers into friends and enemies into conversation partners, one by one. Good thoughts. And a combination of Kevin Bacon, who is still slightly an airhead, and a man who has thought deeply about this and interpreted it for us. Okay, the offering is by Victoria Weinstein. We say in our church that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. Oh, I forgot. Does anybody want to have a comment or want to say anything about degrees of separation? I keep forgetting this. We got so many few people, but that's, to me, one of the things that really drew me to this church when I came years ago was the fact that after the sermon, you could actually talk to one another and to the pastor or the person presenting the message. You could ask questions if you had a question. You could bring up another viewpoint. Intellectual growth and spiritual growth is an important part of being in this church. Okay, we say in our church that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. What we mean by that is we believe it is a blessing to be able to govern and support our religious community ourselves to make possible by our generosity everything we dream of and do to live out our shared values. Every week we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by taking an offering for the ministries of this church. And we are not passing the plate because of the COVID. So the plate is here if you'd like to put something in. Do not feel any obligation to do that. And last Sunday we had closed church, and last Sunday was the first Sunday of the month, so the fish plate is out. If you'd like to put something in the fish plate, feel free. And we have the honor and the pleasure of listening to Ain't Misbehavin' by Fats Waller. Great music. And the slide for offering is a buffalo in Yellowstone Park. Pretty amazing sight if you've ever seen that, covered in snow, unbelievable. Our closing hymn is 205, Amazing Grace, and as always, a very moving song and a very moving thought behind it. always an amazing song, whether you hear it at an inauguration or a football game or in church. It has the meaning that carries on always. Our closing words, The World Attained by Barrow Dunham. Now, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor, that our small victories may end in triumph, and that the world awaited will be a world attained. Okay, and our postlude. And thank you, Lloyd, for the gift of music, which brings us all together no matter what language you speak, no matter what culture you come from. Everybody can join in music. So that ends our service. New Madison Unitarian Church, Universalist Church. Stay safe out there. Wear your masks. I would suggest double masking if you're going to any place where there's a lot of people. Wear your eye protection, your gloves. And if you need help making connection with the vaccination, get a hold of the church. Leave a message. Go to the website. Just let us know by one way or another, and we will see if we can help you out. So, stay warm.